Top 10 Notable Spies in History. When we think about spies, we usually imagine the famous names, the people who appear in history books, the people whose stories became movies, the people whose missions changed the course of wars and shaped the future of nations. But the truth is, the greatest spies in history are probably people we will never know about. Their identities remain classified. Their missions remain hidden. If they did their jobs perfectly, nobody should have ever realized the mission even happened. Even here at Spytech, with all our resources, we can't claim to know every intelligence operation that has ever taken place. And that is the strange paradox of espionage. The better a spy is, the less likely they are to become famous. But intelligence gathering itself is nothing new. It has existed for thousands of years. More than 2,000 years ago, the Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, "One who knows the enemy and knows himself will not be endangered in 100 engagements." That simple idea, that information is a weapon, has influenced military thinking for centuries. Throughout history, spies have been soldiers, scientists, diplomats, revolutionaries, criminals, and even unlikely heroes who never considered themselves spies at all. This list is not necessarily the 10 greatest spies ever, because that list may be impossible to create. Instead, these are 10 of the most notable spies whose stories did actually escape into the spotlight. And each one represents a different role within the intelligence world. The following are 10 people who demonstrate just how powerful information can be. Number 10. Tony Mendez. When people imagine a spy, they often imagine someone who can disappear into a crowd, create a new identity, and fool even experienced intelligence officers. Few people mastered that skill better than Tony Mendez. During the Cold War, Mendez became one of the CIA's greatest experts in disguise and covert operations. His most famous mission came during the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis, when 6 American diplomats escaped the US Embassy and hid in Tehran. The problem was obvious. They were trapped in a hostile country, surrounded by Iranian security forces, and any attempt to simply remove them would almost certainly fail. Mendez created an extraordinary cover story. The diplomats would pretend to be members of a Canadian science fiction film crew scouting locations for a movie. The operation involved fake passports, disguises, and an entire fictional production company complete with scripts and artwork. The mission became known as the Canadian Caper and successfully brought the 6 Americans home. The story was later explored in the Canadian documentary Our Man in Tehran. But the Canadian Caper was only one example of Mendez's career. For decades, his specialty was deception, the art of making false identities believable enough that people accept them as reality. Unlike many spies who disappear into history, Mendez eventually became an author, sharing some of his experiences and helping establish the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. His career demonstrates one of the oldest principles of espionage. Sometimes the best way to hide is not to avoid attention. It is to create a completely different reality. Number 9. Mata Hari. If Tony Mendez represents the professional spy who mastered the craft, Mata Hari represents the opposite side of espionage. The person who entered the world of intelligence without truly understanding the danger. Born Margaretha Zell in the Netherlands, she became famous across Europe under the stage name Mata Hari. In early 20th century Paris, she helped to popularize the art of exotic dancing by transforming herself into a symbol of mystery and glamour. Her performances made her famous among European high society, giving her access to diplomats, military officers, and influential figures. During World War I, French intelligence recruited her, believing her social connections could provide valuable information about Germany. The Germans also gave her money and treated her as an intelligence asset. But in reality, Mata Hari was not the brilliant master spy that popular culture often portrays. The French received little or no useful intelligence from her, and although she accepted money from German contacts, she provided them with no valuable information either. Unfortunately, her seductress reputation alone was not enough. In 1917, French authorities arrested her, as the Germans decided to burn her cover as payback for her poor intel. She was soon executed by firing squad. Many historians believe she was a convenient scapegoat for the French during a difficult period of the war. Desertion had become problematic, and her story created the perfect headline to remind the French people about the consequences of disloyalty. Mata Hari's story remains famous not because she was a great spy, but because she demonstrates an important lesson. Espionage is not a game. Without proper planning, discipline, and tradecraft, entering that world can be disastrous. Number 8. Harriet Tubman. Our next entry also began without formal intelligence training. But unlike Mata Hari, Harriet Tubman learned the skills of espionage through necessity, experience, and survival. Born into slavery in Maryland, Tubman escaped in 1849. Instead of simply seeking freedom for herself, she carved out her own place in history by repeatedly returning to slave states and rescuing family members and strangers in what became known as the Underground Railroad. Without any knowledge of modern intelligence, she built trusted networks. She used coded communications. She relied on safe houses. She created methods for moving people through hostile territory without detection. Long before she was involved in legitimate military intelligence, Tubman was already practicing the fundamentals of clandestine operations. During the American Civil War, the Union Army recognized the value of her abilities. She became a scout, intelligence gatherer, and even planned military operations. Her most famous mission was the Combahee River Raid in 1863. Using intelligence from her previously established network, Tubman helped guide Union forces through Confederate territory and assisted in the rescue of more than 700 enslaved people. The operation was a remarkable success. Not a single Union soldier was lost. The contrast between Harriet Tubman and Mata Hari could hardly be greater. Both civilian women entered the game of espionage without any training. But while Mata Hari relied on her handlers and found herself becoming a pawn in a dangerous world she did not fully understand, Tubman built her own intelligence network through years of careful work. She mastered secrecy, communication, recruitment, and extraction, techniques still used by intelligence organizations today. And unlike most people on this list, Tubman survived her dangerous career. She lived to the age of 91, dying peacefully of natural causes. In a field where failure often meant prison or execution, Harriet Tubman's story is a rare example of a spy who not only succeeded, but lived to see the global impact of her work. Number 7. George Washington. When people think of George Washington, they usually think of the general who led the Continental Army or the first president of the United States. But one of his greatest assets during the American Revolution was something less obvious: intelligence. Washington understood that his poorly trained army could not defeat the British Empire through traditional battlefield strength alone. The British had a professional military, superior resources, and years of combat experience. The Americans needed another advantage. That advantage was information. Washington developed several independent intelligence networks. Notably, the Culper spy ring was one of these networks of agents operating in and around British-occupied New York. They gathered information about British troop movements, military plans, and political developments. They used coded messages, secret identities, invisible ink, and carefully controlled communication channels to avoid detection. The British military usually had no idea they were being watched. Perhaps even more importantly, Washington understood the value of deception. A commander who knows what the enemy is planning can compensate for their inferior military force through careful planning. But if a commander can also influence what the enemy believes, he gains an even greater advantage. Washington used misinformation to convince British commanders that American forces were stronger, weaker, or positioned somewhere entirely different than they actually were. Rather than just gathering secrets, his agents were shaping the enemy's decisions. Today, intelligence agencies would describe many of these techniques as deception operations and psychological warfare, although the concepts predated this modern terminology. The revolution was ultimately decided by many factors: military victories, foreign alliances, economic pressure, and political support. But Washington also understood that public opinion was the deciding strategic asset. Patriot newspapers, pamphlets, speeches, and carefully crafted propaganda helped maintain support for a long and exhausting war, while British attempts to counter that narrative proved far less effective. Washington's improvised intelligence system played a crucial role in allowing an inexperienced army to survive and ultimately achieve victory in a war of attrition over one of the world's most powerful military forces. His legacy as a spy master is often overlooked. Yet the first president of the United States was also one of history's most skilled practitioners of organized intelligence. Number 6. Klaus Fuchs. While some spies might shape the outcome of battles, others steal information that changes the balance of global power forever. Klaus Fuchs was one of those spies. Born in Germany, Fuchs was a brilliant physicist who became involved in some of the most important scientific projects of the 20th century. During World War II, he worked on the Manhattan Project, the secret Allied program that developed the first atomic bomb. Later, he became involved in Britain's nuclear weapons program. But while he was helping create some of the most advanced weapons in history, he was secretly passing information to the Soviet Union. Of course, these programs were extremely secure, but Fuchs did not steal physical documents. His greatest weapon was his mind. He would study highly classified information, memorize key details, and then pass that information to Soviet intelligence contacts through secret meetings and dead drops. The information Fuchs provided was extremely valuable. The Soviet Union was already pursuing nuclear weapons, but his intelligence dramatically accelerated their progress by years. When the Soviets successfully tested their first atomic bomb in 1949, it shocked the Western world because their development timeline was much faster than research alone would allow. Fuchs was eventually discovered, arrested, and convicted. From the perspective of pure spycraft, his career was not filled with disguises, escapes, or dramatic field operations. He was not a master of deception like Tony Mendez or a network builder like Harriet Tubman. His significance came from something else: access and amazing intellect. A single scientist with access to the right information changed the course of the Cold War. Fuchs demonstrates that in intelligence work, the value of a spy is not always measured by how dramatic the mission appears. Sometimes the most important information is stolen simply because one person decided to give the world a power balance. Number 5. Dmitry Polyakov, aka Top Hat. While valuable intelligence did not necessarily always come from professional spies, it was generally from people who already had access to national secrets because that was their job. Perhaps their job was even in an intelligence agency. Every so often one of these insiders could be turned into what we know as a mole. The most valued example of this role was Dmitry Polyakov. A senior general in the Soviet GRU military intelligence service, Polyakov was one of the highest-ranking Soviet officials ever to secretly provide information to the United States. The CIA gave him the codename Top Hat. For nearly 2 decades, Polyakov provided details about Soviet military capabilities, intelligence operations, and strategic plans. But what made him especially important was that his knowledge extended beyond the Soviet Union itself. He also provided intelligence about Soviet relationships with countries such as China and Vietnam, giving American analysts insights they could not obtain anywhere else. His information also exposed Soviet agents operating inside Western intelligence services. Former CIA officer Sandy Grimes described Polyakov as one of the greatest intelligence sources the United States had ever possessed. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Polyakov was his longevity. For almost 20 years, he remained positioned inside one of the world's most secretive military organizations. But eventually, every spy faces the same danger. What if there is someone just like himself on the other side? Polyakov was arrested, after his retirement, by the KGB and executed in 1988. It turned out he was finally exposed by Soviet moles, his own opposite numbers hiding within Western intelligence agencies. His fate is a reminder of the brutal reality of espionage. If your cover is burned, there is often no escape, even if it happens many years later. Dmitry Polyakov was not famous during his lifetime, but the information he provided helped shape some of the most important intelligence decisions of the Cold War. Perhaps the true measure of a spy is not any personal notoriety they achieve, but how much history changes because of what they did. Number 4. Tsar Peter I of Bulgaria. Sometimes the most valuable intelligence does not come from a spy risking their lives behind enemy lines. Sometimes it comes from a scout watching the horizon at exactly the right moment. In the year 941, one piece of information placed the ruler of Bulgaria in a position where his decision could influence the fate of entire civilizations. The Byzantine Empire was one of the great superpowers of the medieval world. Its capital, Constantinople, was considered one of the most impressive and heavily defended cities on earth. But a massive threat was approaching. A fleet led by Prince Igor of Kiev, the ruler of the Rus, the Viking warriors who already controlled much of Eastern Europe, was moving south through the Black Sea toward Constantinople. The approaching armada was reported to Tsar Peter I, while it was still en route along the Bulgarian coast. This presented Peter with a difficult strategic choice. Bulgaria had fought wars against Byzantium for generations. Allowing this powerful surprise attack on Constantinople could actually eliminate Peter's old enemy. But he also understood the larger geopolitical danger. If the Rus from the north became the dominant power in the south, Bulgaria would suddenly find itself surrounded by this dangerous aggressor on all sides. So Peter made the strategic decision to warn Constantinople. The information proved critical. When the Ruse fleet arrived, they found an undefended city just as they had expected. Unknown to them, the Byzantines had prepared perhaps the greatest surprise attack in the history of war. About 15 retired unseaworthy ships were waiting in the harbor, but they had been equipped with the legendary secret weapon known as Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary substance that could burn even on water. The huge Ruse armada numbered in the thousands, so they circled in far too close to the tiny, seemingly harmless Byzantine fleet, and the story of what happened next became the stuff of legend. Hundreds of Ruse ships were burned immediately. Soldiers who attempted to escape the flames by leaping into the water found themselves drowned by the weight of their armor. Historical accounts say that the sea itself was on fire while the panicked Ruse attempts to escape only created a massive logjam. The flames apparently wiped out a large portion of the fleet. Ultimately, this blow was decisive enough to allow Constantinople to survive the invasion. Now, there was not a great deal of traditional spycraft involved in this story, but we are talking about the impossible defeat of a massive invasion that had been strategically planned against an undefended city. The only factor which could explain this decisive outcome is intelligence. Peter I was able to leverage his information to neutralize the strategic threat to his own country. Unfortunately for Bulgaria, great powers rarely reward loyalty or show gratitude towards their lesser neighbors. Although Byzantium benefited enormously from Peter's warning, within decades, they would simply pay the Rus to invade Bulgaria for no particular reason. Peter's fate was to suffer a stroke as he witnessed the destruction of his empire. His story is a reminder that intelligence may allow you to change history, but even if you do, you still can't expect history to favor you. Number 3. Karalia, Chanakya. Long before official intelligence agencies existed, one man was writing the blueprint for implementing spies as just another part of the state. His name was Karalia, also known as Chanakya. Living in ancient India around the 4th century BC, Karalia was the advisor to Chandragupta Maurya, the founder of the Mauryan Empire. He is best known for creating the Arthashastra, one of the earliest surviving written works on statecraft. And unlike many ancient political texts that focus only on kings, armies, and taxation, the Arthashastra added detailed chapters discussing espionage. It describes spies as essential tools of government. Agents should be trained to adopt different identities. They should use coded communication. They should infiltrate enemy states. They should gather information and influence political events. It even describes using weaponized disinformation and propaganda to weaken opponents. Many of these concepts sound surprisingly modern because they are exploited today more than ever. The book essentially describes intelligence as an organized government function rather than simply a collection of individual spies doing their missions. But Karalia was not merely a theorist. Tradition credits him with using these methods himself. He helped Chandragupta overthrow the existing ruling dynasty, establish the Mauryan Empire, and create one of the most powerful states in ancient India. He became the strategist behind the throne, one of the earliest true puppet masters who manipulated alliances, gathered intelligence, and shaped events from behind the scenes. In many ways, Karalia represents a different type of spy. He was not a field agent sneaking through enemy territory, nor did he seek to sit on the throne himself. He was the architect of an entire intelligence system. Most famous spies are remembered because of one mission. Karalia is remembered because he wrote the playbook. His writings would spread all throughout the Silk Road and influence political thinkers for centuries. The idea that intelligence, deception, and information warfare were fundamental parts of state power have been normalized ever since. Number 2. Oleg Penkovsky. During the Cold War, the world lived under the shadow of nuclear destruction. The United States and Soviet Union possessed weapons powerful enough to destroy civilization. And sometimes, the difference between peace and catastrophe came down to one thing: knowing the truth. Oleg Penkovsky was a Soviet military intelligence officer who became one of the most valuable sources ever recruited by Western intelligence. Like Dmitry Polyakov, Penkovsky was a senior officer in the GRU, the Soviet Military Intelligence Service. But his greatest importance came during one of the most dangerous moments in modern history, the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1962, the Soviet Union secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the United States. American leaders had to decide how to respond. An invasion or airstrike could potentially destroy the missile sites, but it could also trigger a nuclear war. Penkovsky had already provided the United States and Britain with detailed information about Soviet missile capabilities, including critical information about the weapons being deployed in Cuba. This intelligence helped American officials understand what was actually happening rather than relying on assumptions and worst-case scenarios. President John F. Kennedy now had a much clearer picture of Soviet capabilities and Soviet intentions. That knowledge gave him more confidence to pursue a diplomatic solution instead of immediately choosing military action. The crisis was eventually resolved through a secret agreement between Washington and Moscow. Whether Penkovsky alone prevented World War III is impossible to prove. History is rarely that simple. But there is little doubt that his intelligence gave American decision-makers a critical advantage during one of the most dangerous confrontations in human history. The lesson is one that appears repeatedly throughout espionage history. The most valuable intelligence is often not information about what your enemy has done. It is information about what your enemy is capable of doing. Number 1. Richard Sorge. Speaking of world wars, few conflicts in history have been as complicated or as consequential as World War II. The outcome was determined by millions of soldiers, industrial production, scientific breakthroughs, political decisions, and the actions of countless individuals. But what if one spy helped influence the outcome more than almost anyone else? That spy was Richard Sorge. Sorge was a Soviet intelligence officer operating under one of the most ambitious covers imaginable, a journalist. But this was not simply a fake identity. Sorge was so convincing that he joined the Nazi Party in Germany in 1929 and became deeply connected to German political circles. His reputation became so strong that when he was later assigned to Japan as a correspondent, German officials trusted him completely. In fact, Joseph Goebbels himself attended Sorge's farewell dinner. Once in Japan, Sorge again built extraordinary trust with the local Nazis. He studied Japanese and Asian geopolitics, military strategy, history, and culture so thoroughly that he became one of the world's leading experts on Asia. His knowledge was so vast that the German embassy was allowing him to secretly write their official intelligence reports because they seldom knew how to explain the local news to their home office in Europe. Of course, this also allowed Sorge to have unlimited access to all kinds of classified information no journalist would ever be allowed to see. The most important intelligence Sorge sent to Moscow concerned Japan's military plans in 1941. At the time, Germany was urging Japan to attack the Soviet Union from the east, creating a devastating two-front war. Sorge discovered that his embassy had failed to convince Japan, and they would instead mobilize their forces in China towards Southeast Asia. This information was crucial. It meant Stalin could move his entire experienced Soviet forces away from the eastern border and send them to defend Moscow against the advancing German army. Approximately 150,000 fresh troops, along with thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery pieces, were transferred west immediately. They arrived at a critical moment. The German offensive had just stalled due to a brutal winter blizzard, and the Soviet counterattack helped mark a major turning point in the war. Without that intelligence, the defense of Moscow would have likely failed. The consequences of a German capture of Moscow would have changed the balance of the war, giving Germany access to badly needed oil, grain, and millions of skilled workers. Suddenly, with no eastern front to protect, England would have stood alone. But the story of Richard Sorge also shows the tragic reality of espionage. The man who helped save the Soviet Union was not rewarded by the country he served. Japan arrested him in 1941, and he was executed in 1944. Stalin refused all offers for prisoner exchanges. The spy who changed the course of World War II was shown all the same gratitude as Tsar Peter I. The very people he saved callously allowed him to be destroyed. Richard Sorge's story represents another painful contradiction of espionage. A spy can influence the fate of nations. They can save their country. They can change history. And yet, when the mission is over, they are often forgotten or completely abandoned. In conclusion, espionage has always existed in the space between secrecy and history. The greatest spies are usually invisible. They succeed quietly, operate anonymously, and disappear into classified files. But occasionally, their stories escape. The people on this list came from completely different worlds. A disguise expert, a seductress, a freedom fighter, a revolutionary general, a nuclear scientist, high-ranking intelligence officers, ancient political strategists, and a career spy who changed the outcome of a world war. Their stories show that espionage is not one skill. It is a combination of observation, deception, communication, courage, and sometimes extraordinary luck. Movies often make spying look glamorous, filled with gadgets, action, and adventure. The reality is much darker. For many spies, Success means nobody knows their name. Failure can mean prison or execution. Yet these individuals remain part of history because their actions influenced events far beyond their own lives. And somewhere in the world today, there are probably spies whose stories will not be known for decades, or perhaps ever. Because the greatest spy in history may not be the one whose story we remember. It may be the one whose mission was so successful that we will never even know it happened. If you enjoyed this journey through the hidden world of espionage, make sure to subscribe to Spytech for more stories about intelligence, technology, and the people who changed history from the shadows. Let us know in the comments, who do you think is the most impressive spy in history? And who would you add to this list? There are thousands of years of intelligence history still waiting to be explored, and many of the greatest stories have not even been declassified yet. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next mission.